Okay, so are you ready for a deep dive into something kind of interesting? We're talking about homeopathy this week.
It's a system of medicine that's been around for, like, forever.
Yeah.
But people are still arguing about it.
Yeah, and for good reason. It really makes you think about healing in like a totally different way.
Exactly. So if you haven't, like, really gotten into the whole homeopathic thing before we're getting all our info from this podcast called Lifelens Talks Podcast.
Yeah.
And they did a whole thing on homeopathy. And the first thing they talked about that I thought was so interesting is this idea
Of like cure, like, have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah.
It's like you're fighting fire with fire, but like in a medical way.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that makes you scratch your head at first.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so you know how when you cut onions, your eyes like water.
Homeopathy is like, what if we just took a super duper tiny amount of onion and use that to like treat watery eyes from allergies?
Okay, see, now that's where I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
How can something that causes a problem, even in a tiny little amount, make it better?
Right. That's the million-dollar question for sure. It all goes back to this guy, Samuel Hahnemann. He was a doctor back in the 1700s, and he was already like, I don't know about all this conventional medicine stuff.
He thought there had to be a gentler way to treat people who were sick. And he thought that if you gave the body a tiny taste of whatever was wrong with it, it could like kickstart its natural healing power.
Oh, so it's kind of like giving your immune system a little heads up. Like, hey, remember this. Be ready to fight it off.
Yeah, exactly. And Hahnemann, he took that idea even further with this process called succussion.
Succussion. Okay, break that down for me. What is that? It sounds like some serious chemistry stuff.
It kind of is. It's basically diluting something over and over again in water or alcohol and then shaking it really, really hard.
And I mean really diluting it, like to the point where there's pretty much zero chance there's even one molecule of the original stuff left.
Wait a minute. Are you serious? There's like a chance that there's not even one molecule of the thing left in the remedy. What's even in it then?
Well, that's where all the debate comes in. Homeopaths think that even though it's been diluted like crazy, the water still remembers the original substance.
It's like the water has a memory.
So the water remembers what it used to be, and that like memory is what's supposed to make you better. I gotta say, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around that one.
Yeah, and you're not alone.
Yeah.
Trust me. Most scientists are pretty skeptical about all this. I mean, we're talking about diluting things so much that it goes against everything we know about chemistry and physics. To think that there's still something left at that level,
Yeah.
well, it's tough to swallow.
Yeah, I can see how scientists would be like, hold on a second. It's kind of like saying you can make onion soup by just whispering the word onion into a pot of water.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Despite all that skepticism, homeopathy is actually super popular all over the world. Like the Lifelens Talks podcast was talking about how in India, it's not just some weird alternative thing. They have like whole hospitals and medical schools for homeopathy.
Millions of people use it for their healthcare.
Whoa, I had no idea.
It's huge over there. And even in some parts of Europe, like Germany and the UK, you'll find homeopathic practitioners working right alongside regular doctors.
So it's got to be doing something, right? I mean, people aren't just lining up for sugar pills for no reason.
That's true. And it's hard to ignore all the stories you hear about people getting better with homeopathy.
Especially for like chronic stuff that regular medicine doesn't always have the answers for.
Okay, so let's get into that. How do homeopaths actually treat people? Like, is it all about finding the right super diluted thing?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of it. They got to find the right remedy for you. But it's not just about like your physical symptoms. Homeopaths look at the whole picture.
They want to know about your mental and emotional state, your lifestyle, what you eat, everything.
So they're trying to understand you as a person, not just like the disease itself.
Yeah, exactly. They think illness is more than just a physical thing. It's like an imbalance in your whole system.
So while a regular doctor might just try to make your symptoms go away, a homeopath is going to try to figure out what's causing that imbalance in the first place and help your body get back into balance naturally.
So it's less about fighting the disease and more about helping your body heal itself.
Exactly. And a lot of people find that really appealing. They like the idea of a gentler approach that works with their body instead of against it, you know?
Totally. But I'm sure there are still skeptics out there. What do they say about all this? Is it all just the placebo effect?
The placebo effect is definitely a big part of the conversation when it comes to homeopathy.
And just in case anyone needs a reminder, the placebo effect is that crazy thing where just believing something will work can actually make you feel better.
Yeah, it's wild, right? Our brains are super powerful.
And a lot of scientists think that anything good that happens from homeopathy is probably just the placebo effect.
But even if it's just the placebo effect, it's still making people feel better, right?
True. True. It makes you wonder, though, is it really the remedy itself, the water with that memory or whatever, or is it all in your head?
Like, is it just the power of believing in something and the whole experience of getting the treatment that makes the difference?
So confusing. It really makes you think. So where does that leave someone like me? Someone who's listening to all this and kind of intrigued, but also kind of skeptical.
Well, first of all, being curious is awesome. That's how we learn.
But it's super important to remember that homeopathy shouldn't be like your only form of medicine. You know, it's usually best to think of it as something you do in addition to regular medicine.
So you shouldn't like ditch your doctor, but maybe you could talk to them about whether homeopathy could work alongside your regular treatment.
Exactly. It's all about taking charge of your health and learning as much as you can. Do your research, talk to qualified people, and most importantly, listen to your own body.
Because ultimately it's about what works for you.
Right.
And it sounds like homeopathy is really all about figuring out what works for each individual person.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, no matter what you think about the science. Healing is personal, and it's not just about getting rid of a disease. It's about understanding the whole person, their mind, their body, and everything they've been through.
That's a really good point.
Okay.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of homeopathy, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's good to be curious, ask questions, learn about different ways to be healthy.
But always do your research, talk to experts, and make good choices for yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that just about wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. See you next time.